The goal of this video series is to demonstrate how to build accessible websites. In this video I will talk about how to build websites that are accessible by users who rely on screen readers to navigate a website. A screen reader is a technology that helps people who have difficulty seeing to access and interact with digital content, like websites or applications via audio or touch. The main users of screen readers are people who are blind or have very limited vision, which according to PowerMapper, make up to 4% of the population. To understand how to optimize a website, first you need to understand how screen readers convey the content of the page to its users and how a blind person uses the screen reader to navigate the site. So let's assume a blind user just landed in a website. They have the screen reader on. At this moment the screen reader will decide which language it should speak based on the declared language of the web page. That's why the website should always have the lang HTML attribute with the value matching the language of the document. This attribute is not only important for a user who is using a screen reader, it is also important for a user who don't understand the language of the document and they want to have the auto-translate browser functionality on. Now that the screen reader knows what the language of the document is, the first element it will read out loud to its user is the title of the page. That's why it is really important to have descriptive titles in each page of the website. If for example the title of the page is the name of the company, this tells nothing to a blind user which page they are visiting. When the title of the page is read by the screen reader, it is now up to the user to decide how they want to continue navigating. Many screen readers have the option to list all the headings of the page. This way a user can understand what the page is about without having to go through each element one by one. This saves a lot of time since they can only focus on those sections of the page that they are interested in. This is how the structure of the headings should be in a website. Try not to mess this order and definitely do not skip headings. Another way users can navigate the web page is by listing all the links of the page. This is very useful especially when a user is searching for something specific on a page. If for example a user wants to go to the Contact Us page, they can list all the links in the page, go through each link one by one, and click on the Contact Us link. When working with links, here are 4 things to keep in mind. Be descriptive, avoid creating links that say click here. Be concise, links can span several words, but keep them to the most relevant words or phrase. Try the skim test. A visitor should be able to skim the links on a page and understand what they link to, without reading the context. Avoid duplication. When 2 links on a page go to the same destination, you create more work for your site's visitors who have to figure out if and how the links are different. Another quick way to navigate the website is by using landmarks. Landmarks are an effective way to bypass blocks of content. The ability to jump from one landmark to the other will save user a lot of time when navigating the website. And by using these methodologies a blind user can quickly understand what the page is about. Now that we have a general idea how a blind user navigates the website, it's time to also explain how a screen reader actually works. So, we start building a website with HTML. The HTML gets parsed by the browser and it is turned in this thing called the document object model. Later on our document object model is combined with CSS and eventually we draw something to the screen, we get our graphical user interface, we get our website. What is important to know is that this is not the end of the process. A screen reader doesn't communicate with the graphical user interface. One thing that browser does is that it takes the document object model and it creates another tree. The accessibility tree. Just like the document object model, this tree is full of nodes. When someone is navigating a website using assistive technologies, they are in fact navigating the accessibility tree. To put things into perspective, I will now visit a website. Here in the screen is the graphical user interface of this website. By using Inspect, I can view the document object model of this website. Here I am focusing on the title of the web page. To view the accessibility tree, we need to click on this icon at the top right corner. The accessibility tree is a simplified version of the document object model. When browser creates this tree, it edits out stuff that are not semantically interesting. Earlier in this video I mentioned that title of the page is the first thing that assistive technologies read out loud to their users. And the first node of the accessibility tree is actually the title of the page. In the second level of this tree we have the landmarks of the page. Based on the complexity of the page, you can decide how many landmarks you want to create. Always keep in mind that the HTML code you write matters a lot. That's why it is always advised to write your HTML using semantics. A semantic element clearly describes its meaning to both the assistive technologies and the developer. Here, it is clearly shown that we have a navigation, and in that navigation we have skip links and language selectors. This is because when the HTML for this website was written, for this section the navigation tag and ARIA label were used. If we use a generic tag like division for example, for someone who is using a screen reader this part of the website loses its meaning. The graphical user interface or the front end of the website was not affected but the structure of the page was. And if we remove the value of the ARIA label attribute, it makes it even harder for a blind user to understand what the section is about. Let's now see another example when HTML is not used properly. So, built-in elements, like buttons, have rich semantics, which is why it is suggested to use them. Generic elements on the other hand, like division tag have generic semantics. So when we use generic elements to do stuff like act as a button, we are messing up the semantics. Even though the division tag is styled to look like a button, non-sighted users do not understand that this is supposed to act as one. For them this is just a text. There is a high chance they will not click on it, they might skip it. And this is a problem. Always make sure to use the right element for the job. Sometimes you will be in a situation that there is no existing element for what you are trying to build. We don't have a tabs element in HTML. So what do we do in this case? Only in this case, we use ARIA attributes. Basically all this does is that it adds semantics to an element. So how do we learn ARIA attributes? Well, Web Accessibility Initiative has made it easy for us. They have created a document where they list common UI patterns like tabs for example. When you click on the element you are trying to build, you can read all about ARIA and accessibility for that element. This document is super useful, and I highly recommend you to read it. Also, since we are here, I also want to mention that here you can also find all you need to know about the landmarks in a web page, a topic that I mentioned earlier in this video. So to sum up the video, every time you are building anything for the web, make sure that whichever way a user is accessing the content, they have the best and richest experience possible. Ideally do this using native elements, but if you can't, that's the time when you reach out to something like ARIA.